What is the first thing in your Wonderbox?
Hannah Hawkswell.
Who's this?
Oh,
Hannah. There
So
we
is this
go.
your first thing you're putting in the Wonderbox?
First thing in the Wonderbox, Hannah Hawkswell. What do you know of Hannah Hawkswell? Anything?
No.
So she had the life that you want for your anus. Absolutely on her own, lived on a farm run by her parents. Her parents died. All the family around her, so 200 years ago, it would have been all her family's owned little bits of land.
Yeah.
They all sold off, died, moved, and she was literally on her own. And she lived a life where she had a cow, it would have a calf. She'd raise the calf and sell it for 200 quid or whatever, and that would be her money for the year. And that would be the only time she saw someone is selling the cow. She'd go into town every now and again. She got bread and butter delivered to a wall. She had to smash through the reservoir to get water in the winter. And that was her life, all of it. And then she was on a documentary. She was like a Fred Dibner type. She was only meant to be a little snippet on a documentary about farms in winter.
Yeah.
And it went insane, and everybody just fell in love with her because there was something in her sort of soul and the life she led, and that she wasn't bitter, she wasn't angry, she didn't want anything. She was very calm and placid. She spoke beautifully, sort of North Yorkshire, slightly northeastern lilty accent. And she became like this early viral hit. Nowadays, it would have been Instagram. Someone would have done a video and, you know, it would have been against her will almost.
What era is this?
70s, I would
Right.
say.
Yeah.
I think, yeah, so it was a documentary. I can't remember the name of it now. Was it called A Winter Too Few or something like that? And it was about how these little isolated farms cope.
So what do you love about her?
I loved that she wasn't. I think at the time I got into her, early 20s, like people get into bands, I got into an isolated pensioner. And
Which is a great sentence.
I was sort of willfully living that life of trying to be like Uranus. I just wanted to be on my own, didn't want to be filmed.
Yeah.
I just wanted to do gigs and go home and be on my own and not talk to anyone. And
Well,
she
I
had
remember that era of you. I always feel it was like your, you know, when you see Luke Skywalker in the recent films when he's living on that island.
I haven't seen those.
Well, he lives on an island and he milks these peculiar things, but he's on his own. And it was that you were a Jedi monk when you lived in Swindon, but that's what I think of you as that. You went in your cave, you did your work, you came out, you went home.
Yeah, but like, I mean, just seriously unhappy, really.
But yet
But doing my best work.
got where you wanted to go.
Yeah,
It's sort of that weird thing, isn't it? Of like, it's such a strange thing, isn't it? Where you kind of, if you'd been happy, would you have become the comic you wanted to be? I don't know. But maybe you would have done in spite of all those things. It's difficult, isn't it?
No, I agree. And if I'd become happy and not become the comic I wouldn't have met Lucy, so I wouldn't have had my daughter, so I wouldn't have the happiness I have now.
Yeah, exactly.
So oddly, early happiness would have been the worst thing that could have happened to me.
So are you looking at this Hannah Hawkswell? How old was she when you?
Oh, so she would have, well, hard to tell really. I guess by then sort of 50s, 60s, but looked 80s because she lived in a house with no power or heating. I mean, she looked old.
So
It wasn't a sexual thing.
I'm not saying it was. Not saying for the
No?
slightest, but it was. I mean, it's also peculiar that it was a lifestyle thing, but we'll get onto that in a minute. So you were looking at this, let's say, 60-year-old lady, and just battling the world, but doing everything she needed to do. What was it that did you find kind of like a solace in that?
Yeah, she was like a hero because she didn't. She sort of said, well, it would have been nice to have the other thing. There's a story in the book where she talks about I think she died a virgin. And she talks about how there was a dance once when she was a teenager, and the village hall, which is no longer a village hall, but when it was, it used to have a dance, and she danced with a soldier who was back from the war, and there was a sort of connection between them, and she thought, excuse me, she thought, oh, this is going to be it, and then he got called away again, and she never saw him again, and she's not dwelt on that in a way of, but then, you know, I met a guy in co-op. She's then not had that ever again or anything even close to that, and she's mused on that for 40, 50 years, and she's still all right with it. She's like, oh well, you know, that, who knows what that thing was, that might have been nice, but never happened. So, you know, I'm happy with what I've got. I like to go and stare into the dark reservoir at 2 a.m.
Is that what she liked to do?
That was one of her favourite spots, was at the bottom of the farm. She'd go out in the moonlight and look at how black the water was. But it's not bullshit. It was a
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
genuine,
yeah.
this is where my life is, and I'm totally fine with it. And you can smell when someone's lying. I
Yeah.
was lying. I was like, no, I'm fine with it. I'll do loads of gigs, and then I go to Asda and I make food and I drink a bottle of wine and I have a little cry in the bath and it's all fine.
Best
And I
place
look
to-
back now and I think everybody knew. Best place to do it.
It says here on the internet, after the documentary, she got famous, went wild, died in Vegas.
Well, I
Hannah-
know where she died because I went to her house while she was alive.
How the f*** you?
It wasn't about that.
No. But
I drove to where she lived while I was writing the book, actually. She'd retired to like a village and I drove and I thought, I'll just see if she walks to the post office and I'll just say hello to her.
Oh, okay.
And I parked outside her house for about a couple of hours before I realised she's probably not going to come out while there's a guy parked outside her house staring in her living room window.
Exactly. Dressed as a soldier to trick her. What?
But she didn't like, so she, off the back of the fame, people started sending her parcels, started sending her money. And she was very, oh, it's lovely, it's very nice. That's how she told, oh, it was lovely. And she was always grateful for it. But off the back of that, I got taken around Europe and around the world and to Norway and just didn't like it. Just wanted to be at home. But again, no bitterness, no like.
So what do you like the fact that she was comfortable in her own skin?
Yeah, I think so, yeah. And all that projection of, oh, I bet you wish you had this though, or I bet you wish you'd been there. And actually, I don't think people could handle that she genuinely didn't want any of that. Even not having done it or seen it, she wasn't bothered. There wasn't a bitterness, there wasn't an anger. Very stoic about the life she'd had. The connection to the land and her family and that she felt being in that farm meant more to her than all the other stuff. And she'd had time to weigh that up. That wasn't like she'd had time, no telly,
But
no
what's
Netflix.
But what's interesting is this is so presumably when you fell in love with the idea of her, you were a very different person to who you are now.
Yeah.
So do you now look at her differently? Because I often think of like there's a real BC AD with you, like where you sort of had that choice where you kind of chose happiness a bit. Like, and do you think
When you say BCAD, what does that mean? That I went forward and then backward and then forward again?
I mean, as in there was the before Lucy, before kind of happiness, and then
Oh,
there was-
BCAD.
Yeah.
Bible kind of thing.
I see.
Yeah.
I thought it was because it was ABCD. I thought you meant I was at B and then I went to C, but then I went back to A and then I went forward to D again. And I would have absolutely gone with that.
Okay. No. But you see where I was driving now.
Yeah, two
Yeah.
lives.
Yeah, let's do it again. But do you look at her now and think, God, if only that soldier had come back?
No, and I think that's what's nice about her because I don't think that, because I think it would be easy to think that. And I do think she sort of had the life she wanted, and it wouldn't be the one you'd pick for her, but it's no one else's business. What I think there's that feeling of like, but you must have wanted all the things we've got because we all need them and want them. So if you don't need it, then maybe I don't need it. And I think that's what I like about her, that sense of, no, I was really happy with a loaf of bread and some butter a week. She had to tie her bread to the rafters of her house so the mice didn't get it. And it never occurred to her to move or like block up some holes. Or
So you just admire the fact that she made peace and was happy.
I think it's reassuring that because when you watch the videos, and I would recommend people you'll see it immediately. You will see a soul that nowadays I think we only get with like, Susan Boyle, something like that, where everyone makes an instant perception, and it's been very X-factored.
Yeah.
So she'll have been already at the point she came out, she'll have been stylized, and they'll have said the first audition come out looking and awful because everyone's going to think, oh, she can't sing, and then sing Nessun Dorma or something, and that's all now very authored. But in Hannah Hawkswell, you will see immediately when she talks, there's a glint in her eye, there's a youthful voice and a happiness to the way she's talking that is totally alien to her surroundings, and you can just feel it immediately. And I would say her and Jake Thackeray, I remember being in my sort of late teens, early 20s and flicking through the channels and being arrested by something that probably isn't meant for you, but somebody starts talking and you can't, and now you flick through and it's fucking Die Hard and Face Off and then the Kardashians, and you can go through 100 channels, but then the thing that stops you is a 60-year-old woman on a farm talking. And then after that, I bought the DVDs and bought the books, and I found her absolutely fascinating. And I sort of hope because I put her in the Museum of Curiosity when she was still alive.
Yeah.
And I know she listened to Radio 4, and I thought, I wonder if she knew that I'd done that. And I hoped she didn't. And most of the time, you talk about footballers on stuff and you secretly think, well, I hope they know I said it and then they want to be my friend.
Yeah.
With her, I genuinely thought, oh, maybe I shouldn't talk about her because I don't want her to not be able to enjoy that half an hour on Radio 4 because I've brought her into it by mentioning her. And it's very rare you feel that sort of protection for someone.
So you're glad that she never came out of the house then?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. I don't think it was.
What were you planning on doing if she came out?
I think I just wanted to see the house and I wanted to see the village she was in because I knew that was a big change for her, moving off the farm, and she did that sort of reluctantly. But then she actually liked being around people the last few years, from what I can gather, from what a little bit, because she did sort of go off radar. But I think she enjoyed the village and she enjoyed like going to the post office and all that. And I think I just went to see it, and then I thought, oh, well, if she does come out, maybe I'll just, because I'm not the sort of person that she would think knew of her from the documentaries. And also because in every interview she'd ever done, she always said she liked meeting people. So even on the farm, she'd say if walkers went by, she'd go and have a little chat to them. So it's a really odd enjoyment of the chat, but not a sense of, right, let's move to a town. She just enjoyed the little bits she got. And I thought, well, maybe if it was natural, maybe we'd have a nice chat.